Measure and cut the cords to the specs printed below your pattern. For this sun project, I need 11 cords, each 2 feet long. After cutting your cords, you need to attach them to your wood dowel. To do this, you are going to use a lark's head knot. First, fold your cord in half. Lay the folded center part over the bar. Bend the folded center part behind the dowel. With the loop pointing downwards, pull the two ends of the cord through the loop. Tighten the knot, making sure both ends are even. Do this to the rest of your cords until they're all attached to the dowel. Once you have all the cords attached to your dowel, center the cords and push them closer together. This is your pattern. The pattern is made up of rows and columns of little boxes. Each little box corresponds to the cords now hanging from your dowel. In this sun design, my pattern is 22 boxes wide, the same as the number of cords hanging from my dowel. Your pattern is going to be made up of different colored boxes. These colors correspond to the different colors of yarn in your kit. For this sun design, I have 3 different colored yarns: blue, orange, and yellow. This part isn't necessary, but I find it easiest to attach my dowel to something so it will stay in one place without me holding it. Here, I'm tying a piece of yarn to each end of the dowel and anchoring it to a clipboard. You're going to start at the top left box of your pattern and work to the right. For this sun design, the color for the first row on my pattern is blue. Cut a piece of your starting color yarn to about 4 feet long. To attach the yarn to your cord, put the tail end part of your yarn under the cord. Make a loop over the top of the cord and feed the long end of your yarn up through the loop. Hold the tail end of your yarn so it doesn't undo the knot you just made. Push your knot to the top of your cord. Then do the same knot again. Tighten the knot, pushing it to the top of your cord with your fingernail. It should sit right under your lark's head knot. Now the first box on your pattern is complete. Working from left to right, you're going to repeat this knot. Always start with your yarn underneath your working cord. Do the same knot twice for each box of your pattern. Continue to push up the knots with your fingernail so they sit right under your lark's head knot. As you work through the first row on your pattern, make sure to tighten the cord on your dowel before adding the yarn. You also want to make sure your cords are close enough together. Continue until the first row of your pattern is complete. Once your first row is complete, it should look like this. While working through each row of the pattern, I like to use a highlighter or pen to cross out the row after I'm finished, so I can keep track of where I am in the pattern. For the second row, instead of going from left to right, you will go from right to left, starting at the cord furthest to the right. Continue making the same vertical double half hitch knot, except you'll need to do it in the opposite direction since we're now working right to left. Start with the yarn under the cord, then make the loop toward the left, and pull the end of the yarn through the loop. Tighten and repeat a second time. Switch yarn colors as specified in your pattern. For this sun design, my pattern has a yellow square on the 15th column. That means on the 15th cord, I need to use yellow yarn instead of blue yarn. To add a new color, attach the yarn the same way you did your first color. When you're working from right to left, like I'm doing here, you'll need to work in the opposite direction, with the short tail end to the right and the loop to the left. Repeat the knot, tighten, and with your fingernail push the knots to the top, right under the previous row. Tuck the tail end behind so it's out of your way. For my sun design, the next column on my pattern is blue. Since my blue colored yarn is too short, I need to attach a new strand of blue yarn, just like I did the yellow. Whenever you run out of a color or need to add a new color, you will do the same thing, making sure to attach the yarn correctly for the direction you're working. I need the yellow yarn for this next cord. Weave the yellow strand of yarn underneath the cords, but over the blue strand of yarn. Similar to the other knots, make sure the yellow yarn starts underneath the cord before making your knots. The next cord needs to be blue, so I need to put the blue yarn under any cords, but over the yellow yarn. You will do this whenever you need to switch colors. Just remember, yarn always goes under cords, but over other colors of yarn. You will need to do this frequently as you work through the rows of your pattern. You might have 3 or more colors of yarn that you'll need to switch off using. After your second row is finished, you'll switch again to work from left to right, with every row alternating. Here I attached an orange piece of yarn. Since I'm working from left to right, the short tail end of the yarn is to the left and the loop is to the right. Make sure to tuck the short tail ends underneath so they're out of your way. If you find that it keeps getting tangled, you can tape it to the back of your piece so it doesn't get in the way. Don't cut it yet since you'll need them at the end. Switching colors gets trickier when the colored yarn is on the same side that you're working towards. Like in my sun pattern, I need the yellow yarn, but it's on the left side of my working cord and I'm working towards the left. Like always, I weave the yellow yarn under the cords and over any other color of yarns. But when I get to the working cord, I don't put the yarn under it. Tie the knot as if you're already under the cord, as I'm doing here. After every few rows, make sure the design is straight. You can use a ruler for this. Use your fingernail to push up and down the knots to even out your rows so they look neat. When you get to the last row of your pattern, if your yarn won't make it all the way across the row, cut a new piece of yarn. This will help ensure there's no gaps so your work looks as neat as possible. After you're finished, flip it over and tie 2 of the tail ends together using a simple double knot. Do this for all the tail ends so the knots won't loosen. And then cut off the excess yarn. To finish off your piece, cut the cords to whatever length you want. You can leave the cords as they are, knot them to create a funky pattern, or brush out the strands so they unravel. Whatever you want. Get creative and have fun. The last step is to tie the hanging cord from each end of your dowel. Here I used a simple single knot. You can hide the ends or leave the ends ruffled to add to your design.